Hey guys, welcome to Daily Bible Study. We're so glad that you decided to join us today. We are into Song of Solomon or Song of Songs. However you translate that, you get the Song of Songs when you look at the Hebrew idioms, like this is the King of Kings, Lord of Lords, Song of Songs. This is just considered the greatest. Now, because of some of the writing and because of the manuscripts that are found in some of the ancient Mesopotamian cultures, some of the wording makes reference to Solomon and the way that it describes him. There is some debate on whether or not it's Solomon, so that's why some Bibles will have Song of Songs, because it's just connecting the very first part of the book, which is a very common thing in the Hebrew scriptures to do. But if you've never read this book, it's a collection of Hebrew poetry, love poetry. And do you ever ask or wonder, does the Bible have answers, or does the Bible describe life? Well, the Bible's full of all kinds of stuff, and if you've never read Song of Solomon, you will find graphic language about love and the depth of love, and you will see why that matters and why it was so important in Hebrew literature. But one of the things that you will see is the description about the one-on-one intimacy between individuals, right? Which is why many scholars believe that it couldn't have been Solomon because he had 700 wives. But that more than likely, this was probably written in the style of love poetry, that Solomon is kind of the father of this love kind of poetry. And so some have tried to traditionally describe Israel and God, right? So Israel's the female and God is the male, right? So the beloved. And then in the New Testament, they've connected some of Paul's writings in Ephesians, where he talks about husbands loving their wives as Christ loved the church. And so you see that connection there between a husband and a wife. And so you see Jesus and the church being described there. But because of many scholars and many manuscripts that have been found around where Jerusalem was, in Egypt and in Babylonia and different places like that throughout the years, there are manuscripts and manuscripts and manuscripts of this love poetry. And so it's in the style of love poetry, which is why many people are starting to describe it that way. But what do we see in this, right? We see imagery that the author is intending throughout these collection of poems that don't really have any rhyme or reason. They're not any literary form. They're just poems that are put together in the style of Solomon's writing. But what these describe is how unending love is. That love is unending, that love, even as the book ends without any formal ending, the same thing is described in love, right? And so that's interesting when you connect it to the language of the garden, which is what you see a lot of in it. And so you see imagery from Eden, where God walked with man. God had this relationship with humanity, and then they fell, and then everything was broken at that point. So there's imagery there about the unending nature of love and how we can be reminded of how God can connect to us and is still trying to connect with us even today, and will eventually restore everything back to the way that it goes. And so as you read this, tomorrow we have 4 more chapters. I encourage you to read it with that perspective, that this reminds us of God's unending love for us as creation, and be encouraged by the series of poems